So maybe Americans won't be able to afford the higher prices, but foreigners will. Not only might stuff be more expensive in the future, it may not even be available. The government may respond by imposing price controls.
Welcome back to Yanasa TV's As A Man Thinketh. Today, we're with Peter Schiff. Peter is the CEO of Euro Pacific Capital. He runs a podcast known as The Peter Schiff Show, and he was an economic advisor to Ron Paul's presidential campaign in 2008. He's become a voice of reason in our current economic environment of massive speculation and inflation. Do you do much with corn or soybeans or agricultural commodities? What do you think those prices are going to be doing in the near future?
Yeah, well, I think all those prices are going up. So, I mean, I don't do anything myself. I mean, I'm not, storing grains anywhere at my property. I don't have like a silo where I would put them in. I mean, now I could go into commodity futures where you own a futures contract and you're constantly rolling the contracts over to different months. But, rather than trying to, bet on a particular agricultural commodity, I own stocks that operate in that industry that service farmers, and so are selling things that farmers will be buying, and that as crop prices go up, they'll be able to charge more money and they'll earn more money. So I own some companies that operate in the agriculture space. But when it comes to actually owning the commodities themselves, it's really just gold and silver, because those are much easier to store than all those other types of commodities. But yeah, I mean, we do have a lot of exposure through our investment portfolios in that segment, just like I have exposure in the oil and gas market. I mean, I'm not storing oil myself. I don't have a big tank in my backyard where I've loaded up on oil, but I own a lot of oil stocks. I own companies that have oil resources and that are in that industry. And so I'll benefit as a stockholder from higher oil prices, to the extent that those higher prices result in greater profits from the companies that I own.
When you look at the inputs going in with any industry, I guess you can look at it the same way. The inputs that are going in there are getting so high. Do you think that that'll actually cut back on supply and push prices even higher going into the next couple of years? Or do you think that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to the extent that there is less produced, then that puts even more pressure on supply. And I think the market will find an equilibrium between the costs that what you pay to grow the crops and what you can sell them for. But obviously, as the supply is going down, it's going to have to be made up with higher prices, right? So farmers will sell less stuff, but they'll get a lot more money for what they sell. But I also think that the exports could actually pick up quite a bit. So if the dollar really falls, which is what I expect will happen, a lot more of what U.S. farmers produce will end up being sold abroad. So maybe Americans won't be able to afford the higher prices, but foreigners will. And so a lot of what we end up producing, a lot more of what we produce, will end up being consumed in other countries, because as the dollar really loses value, other currencies are gaining value. And so foreigners will be able to use their appreciated currency to outbid Americans for a lot of products. So where you won't see as big an increase will be in services, because services, or at least the services that can't be exported. Let's say like a haircut. The barber can't charge you more money because somebody in Japan is willing to pay a higher price for a haircut, because there's no way that he can export that haircut to Japan. And there's not that many Japanese who are going to come take a vacation over here and then come get a haircut. It's very expensive to come over here. So in that respect, the barber has a hard time passing on, his higher cost of living in a haircut. But the farmer, who could, sell his crops and have them exported to Asia or South America or Europe, I mean, you'll have a lot easier time, passing on those higher costs when you have the whole world as a potential market.
So how do people prepare for that mess?
Yeah, well, one thing that people can do is to go out and buy a lot of the products that they know they're going to need in a year or two or maybe 3 years. Just go out and buy them right now. Because if you wait and buy them later, they're going to be more expensive. They're going to be a lot more expensive, most likely. And if you just put the money in the bank, I mean, you're not going to earn much interest. So why just leave cash in the bank that you're going to use to buy products in the future? Just buy the products right now instead of having all that cash that's just going to lose value. Just buy the things that you know you're going to need, because you don't actually want cash because you want money. You want the money because you want to ultimately buy stuff with it. And if the stuff that you want to buy is going to get much more expensive, then why wait? Just buy it now. But not only might stuff be more expensive in the future, it may not even be available. There may be shortages. The government may respond to significant increases in prices by imposing price controls. And they make it illegal to raise prices, in which case you have shortages. And then the only way to actually buy something is to do it illegally on a black market. And then you pay an even higher premium for the fact that the person selling you those goods is risking going to jail. And so that means they have to charge even more money to make them available. So rather than risk having to buy things on a black market while it's still legal, just stock up on stuff now. I mean, I know it's difficult if things are perishable, but a lot of non-perishable goods, can stay on the shelf for many, many years and be, as good as new. So those things could be bought now. And obviously the stuff that, you need to buy, well, you're just going to have to deal with higher prices on that stuff.
Great.
Or the stuff that won't keep, right? I mean, obviously, you could freeze your meats. You can pack it in a certain way and, just have to pay the utility bills to keep the freezer going. But there are ways of preserving perishables so that they'll have a longer life. So you can do that. But there are some things that, will just last and last. There's certain products that don't really matter.
I appreciate you coming on and chatting with some of our viewers, and hopefully they'll go and check out your podcast. I know you always put out some great information on all the market reports. So if there's more information that people would like to hear, hopefully they check you out.
Yeah, I do 2 or 3 podcasts a week. Schiffradio.com is my website. It's also on my YouTube channel. But anywhere, iTunes, Stitcher, any of these various platforms that have podcasts, chances are you could find my podcast on there. So make a habit of listening. Tell your friends to listen, because most of the mainstream coverage of the economy is completely wrong. It's really biased and trying to perpetuate these myths about government and capitalism. And, so if you want to know what's actually happening and why, my podcast is a good way to do that. I talk politics, talk economics, I talk the markets. And then more importantly, too, if you want to protect yourself, not just educate yourself and help to educate others, but really protect yourself from this coming dollar crisis and try to minimize the impact that it has on you personally. Right? I said inflation is a tax. Well, you can avoid the tax by avoiding what's being taxed, which is US dollars and US dollar denominated investments. So I have a brokerage firm and asset management company where I'm working with clients to try to build portfolios that will not only preserve their wealth during this period, but actually enhance it. There are people that are going to profit as a result of what's going to happen. I mean, a lot of people are going to suffer, but there will be winners, right? There's always winners and losers. And since you have the choice, we're going to lose as Americans. Everybody is going to lose as an American, but we could still win as an investor, And so, but in order to do that, you have to have the right portfolio that factors in the end game and what's going to happen in the long run. Forget about all the noise right now during the bubble. It's what's there when the bubble pops, right? It's like they say, when the tide goes out, we know who's swimming naked, right? What I'm doing is making sure that my clients, got a suit on and, they're ready for the tide to come out. And I can help you, create the right type of globally diversified portfolio that will hedge inflation and that will give you the type of income streams that you can reliably count on to help offset the rising cost of living. So people can, look me up at Europe Pacific Capital or my asset management company. Euro Pacific Funds, epacfunds.com. And also I mentioned gold and silver. Schiff Gold is the best place that I know to get the best prices on gold and silver. This is for physical delivery. You want to get gold and silver coins and bars shipped to your house, contact Schiff Gold to get it.